When two men face each other across the net in the final of the Australian Open in a fortnight, they'll in fact be aiming to be the 100th winner of the Australian men's singles title. The men's event has had a broken, nomadic history. Play was interrupted by 2 world wars. It made the revolutionary leap from amateur to professional, and the title was passed around between 5 Australian cities and even 2 cities in New Zealand before settling in Melbourne. In the lead up to this historic title, Mary Gearin talked to 3 Australian legends of the game for their reflections on the Southern Grand Slam, its past and its future.
95, 22 Grand Slam. So you had 28 Grand Slam titles, you had 22. I only had 19.
Oh, you're missing a few, bro. Yeah. You've got to lift your game.
Yeah. Bit late now.
Just 3 older gentlemen reminiscing in the park.
And gentlemen, just want to say...
Melbourne Park. It's just Frank Sedgman, Neale Fraser and Roy Emerson, with 69 Grand Slam titles between them, veterans of the golden age of Australian tennis.
How does it feel to be busts in a place like this?
Busts.
Busts.
Busts. Oh.
It gets a bit cold at night.
Neale, just look at this great big smile.
They conquered the world, these men, but the home Grand Slam, past and present, holds a special place in their hearts.
Where we used to follow the other Grand Slams in the past, maybe in my time, nowadays I think we're the leader in the Grand Slams. Players like the people here, they like the crowd, they're very fair. You spoil all the players rotten when they come here, so, you know, and they want to come back. Well, would you like to play?
This was one of Roy Emerson's relatively rare trips back from his US base and Swiss tennis academy to take a starring role in the launch of this year's Open. It was also a rare chance to catch up with his one-time hero and mentor, Frank Sedgman, plus his old travelling buddy, fellow doubles champion and partner in Davis Cup glories, Neale Fraser. For Frank Sedgman, the Australian title back in 1949 actually marked a psychological breakthrough that he says led to him becoming world #1.
I played in the Davis Cup team. I'd played with John Bromwich. I used to practice with him a lot, and he was our #1 player. And when I practiced, I could never win a set off him. And I found that I got to play him in the final of the Australian Championships in Adelaide, and all of a sudden my game clicked and I was able to beat him in straight sets. And I never lost to him after that again.
Young Sedgman won the men's title on £10 a week. Before long, he helped start an irresistible bolt towards professionalism that, he admits, almost killed off the amateur Australian Championships.
That's when they decided to turn the game into Open in 1968. That's when all the crowds started to drop off, you see. People weren't interested in watching people that coming through that were not up to the standard of the ones that had turned professional.
What do you think now of professionalism? Did you ever think that the professional world would end up looking like it does now?
No, well, it's hard to believe. And here we are today, looking at the winner of the Men's Open, getting $2.3 million. That's enough to sort of make you always want to go back and play tennis again.
What do you think of how tennis has progressed?
I think it has lost a little bit. You know, I like the players to walk off the court together and walk onto the court together. And now when someone wins, you know, the player that's been defeated has to sit on a chair and watch his opponent celebrate by climbing up into the stands and celebrating with their wives and their nutritionist and their masseuse and their entourage.
Roy Emerson's first of 6 Australian singles titles was in 1961.
I remember that I beat Rod Laver. He'd beaten me the year before in 1960. It was an important major, and one I certainly wanted to win because it was my home tournament. Every player in those days, their dream was to win Wimbledon and, you know, then their own championship. And that was my dream.
In fact, it was the one dream that didn't come true for this man. Incredibly, in retrospect, Davis Cup champion player and captain, Wimbledon and US titles winner Neale Fraser fell short in the 3 Australian singles finals he played.
I'm very disappointed, and my only regret in tennis, I think. 3 times runner-up at the Australian Championships, but I lost to 3 great players. They all won Wimbledon championships. I did have match point on Rod Laver in the final, and I lost 8-6 in the 5th. I can still visualise that actual point itself, and Roy Emerson, to this day, I think he tells me that I hit a ball going out. That's something that I'll never forget. That same year, I went on and beat him at Wimbledon, so I won the Wimbledon Championship in 1960. A reasonable consolation.
These men played when the Australian title still roamed the country. It was staged in Sydney, Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane and Melbourne, where it eventually settled at Kooyong Lawn Tennis Club, before resettling in 1988 at what became known as Melbourne Park.
Unfortunately, it was a tremendous expense that we could have had a Rod Laver Arena or Melbourne Park a few years earlier than we got if we hadn't moved the championships around. But then again, it probably did a lot of good for tennis in Australia in those days.
One advantage of the nomadic titles was fostering local talent around the country. In a much smaller tennis world, few foreigners travelled out here, and when Rod Laver beat Roy Emerson to claim the second of his 3 Australian titles in 1962, 9 of the 12 seeded players were Australian.
We were a big fish in a small pond. Our competition was nowhere near the competition that exists today. It's going to get harder and harder as the years go by. So we won't get the depth of talent of player, I think, to be able to play the game, which means that we're only going to get the odd player that comes through that we hope will be a champion. But we'll keep the rest of the world honest. We'll always be there.
Even if the golden age of men's tennis for Australia has lost some of its lustre, there are still glimmers of hope.
So what do you think of Bernard Tomic? Do you think he's ready to win this next title?
Maybe a little early for him yet, but, you can't count him out. I haven't seen him play a complete match or personally seen him play, but watched a little bit on television. He's got great hands, and he worries a lot of players with his game.
The jump from a junior to a senior is an enormous jump, and I think he's realising that has to entail a lot more dedication and application to his sport. We'll give him 2 or 3 years, and then when he's about 24, I'd be expecting him to be hopefully our next Australian champion. If someone else comes along beforehand, so be it.
The Australian titles have now been utterly transformed into a global event, slick TV product and commercial opportunity, in part to stave off the threat to take a Grand Slam away from these shores. That the event is still here, despite our relative drop in tennis glory, is in large part a tribute to the legacy of these 3 men, who might well feel satisfied with their walk in the park.